Friends of Formula One, 3 massive bombshells are shaking up the paddock right now, and I'm going to break them all down for you in full detail. Lewis Hamilton has broken his silence after Austria and gone after the Federation directly. He says Mercedes clearly has the best power unit out there, and he cannot understand how the ADUO process ruled otherwise. That's a double challenge thrown right at the engineers in Maranello and at the Federation itself. Then there's the Silverstone nightmare, and it could destroy Ferrari from the very first lap. The English circuit has a massive section of 35 to 40 seconds with no braking zones, meaning cars simply cannot recharge the battery. And Verstappen came out of the simulator shaking his head, saying it felt like a completely different track, and that he couldn't help but laugh. The race has already called this Ferrari's worst possible nightmare. And if that weren't enough, Bernie Ecclestone just dropped a market bombshell, revealing he personally tried to convince Horner to join Ferrari. A backstory that blows the door wide open on some truly wild scenarios. We'll also get into the full technical picture from Pirelli on Silverstone, the tire compounds, possible wet weather running, and lateral forces pushing past 5G on the front tires. If you don't want to miss a single update on Ferrari and Formula One, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Now let's get straight into the detailed breakdown. Let's start with the bombshell Lewis Hamilton dropped after that disappointing race in Austria. Despite Ferrari introducing the long-awaited power unit upgrade on the SF 2026, using the first ADUO token, the top speed deficit compared to the Mercedes engine has not been resolved. The 7-time world champion made no effort to hide his deep frustration over a performance gap that, looking at the data, he genuinely struggles to explain. Hamilton said that for some reason, by the end of the straight, Ferrari's power just runs out, while Mercedes keeps pushing. And then came the final blow, the one that really set things off. Mercedes clearly has the best power unit, and he doesn't understand how the ADUO process concluded otherwise. The situation becomes even more surreal when you consider that the Federation, through its latest ADUO evaluation based on the internal combustion engine alone, apparently determined that the engine hierarchy belongs to Red Bull. That ruling, paradoxically, allowed Mercedes to unlock an additional development step. And Hamilton didn't stop there. He actually listed out the possible sources of Mercedes' advantage. They have an impressive amount of power at the end of the straights, way more than anyone else. And he doesn't know where it's coming from. His words. Is it coming from the battery, the internal combustion engine, or a smaller turbo? A series of open questions dropped like landmines into the paddock, throwing a double challenge at Maranello's engineers to close this gap, and at the Federation itself, whose evaluation criteria don't seem to reflect what's actually being seen on track. It's a frontal attack that opens up a massive political fracture around the ADUO system, because if Mercedes truly has the best power unit but on paper ranks second behind Red Bull, then the entire token development mechanism starts to fall apart. Now we get to the most technically alarming story of the week, and it directly concerns the weekend that's about to begin. From Lewfield corner 7 all the way to the breaking point at the Vale S's corner 15, there are virtually no significant braking zones. That means for 35 to 40 seconds, cars will be unable to recharge the battery, bringing back memories of a similar situation we already saw in Australia, in Melbourne. Making things worse, the corrective measures introduced after the opening races lowered the energy limit to 6 megajoules. Max Verstappen already came out ahead of it after running the simulation. He tried it in the sim and couldn't help but laugh. His words, a completely different track. He added that the battery barely lasts a lap, you're always flat out, and it's going to be very tough because there's simply no way to recharge. And here's where the race delivers the devastating verdict that explains why all of this is a genuine disaster for Maranello. The British outlet wrote that there are very few significant braking zones where Ferrari can recover the energy it needs to avoid losing ground more quickly than Mercedes and Red Bull through sections like the descent toward Copse. There is very little energy left to spend on the subsequent straights, and this looks very much like Ferrari's worst possible nightmare. Keep in mind that Hamilton himself, after Austria, had already pointed out that Ferrari's power fades at the end of the straight. At Silverstone, those straights are long and come with no opportunity to recharge. If the hybrid energy deployment problem flagged after Spielberg is real, Silverstone could turn into a much harder weekend than expected, even with the aerodynamic package coming in, including the new front wing. Now let's look at the full technical picture for the Silverstone weekend. The English circuit stretches 5,891 meters across 18 corners, 10 of them right-handers and 8 left-handers. Several of these generate very high lateral forces through rapid high-speed direction changes. The Maggots, Beckett's, and Chapel sequence, combined with the long straights, led Hamilton himself, the driver with the most wins at this circuit, to say that driving at Silverstone feels like sitting in the cockpit of a fighter jet. The asphalt surface is low abrasion with limited roughness, offering a solid level of grip thanks to continuous use, but the track layout will put serious strain on the tires. Lateral forces will exceed 5G in certain sections, just as we saw at Suzuka and as we'll see again in a few weeks at Spa. These stresses will put the front axle under enormous pressure, especially the left front tire, due to the predominance of right-hand corners. That's the tire taking all the load and therefore the one under the most stress by far. For this reason, Pirelli has selected its 3 hardest available compounds: C1 as the hard, C2 as the medium, and C3 as the soft. For the same reason, teams will likely aim for a single pit stop in Sunday's 300-kilometer race, leaning primarily on the C2 and C3 for their superior grip levels. Over the past few years, the C3 has been the only compound to generate light graining, while C1 and C2 have proven more consistent. Silverstone will also host the sprint format this weekend, so the C1 is expected to be used mainly during the single free practice session on Friday. Keep a close eye on the weather too. British conditions are always unpredictable, and in recent years the intermediates have often played a decisive role. Now for the market bombshell that's been shaking the paddock. After the end of his long tenure at Red Bull, Christian Horner's future continues to generate plenty of debate, and the British manager has been linked with several teams, from Alpine to Aston Martin. But now a completely unexpected backstory has come to light. Bernie Ecclestone has revealed that he personally tried to convince Horner to make the move to Ferrari. Speaking to Racing News 365, the former Formula One Supremo said he suggested to Horner that he should consider the challenge at Maranello. He talks to him quite often, Ecclestone said, and at first he tried to convince him to have a go at going to Ferrari. A revelation that reopens some truly explosive market scenarios, because we're talking about the manager who oversaw a mountain of world championships at Red Bull. Ecclestone did openly admit, though, that wherever Horner ends up next, the expectations will be enormous, and that regardless of destination, Horner will have to prove he can win away from Milton Keynes. Christian is in a difficult position, Ecclestone explained. Wherever he goes, if he doesn't succeed, people will say he was only good at Red Bull because of the big budgets. Or they'll say he's not winning anymore for exactly that reason. It's a complicated situation. In recent months, Horner's name has been linked to various options, and over the past few weeks the talk has focused mainly on a possible involvement with Alpine, with some reports suggesting he may also be interested in a shareholder-level operation, alongside a group of investors. Ecclestone, however, admitted he has no certainty about Horner's next move. Where will he end up? He has no idea. His words. 3 open fronts that could reshape the face of this championship. Hamilton has gone directly at the Federation, saying Mercedes has the best power unit and that the ADUO process got it wrong, opening up a potentially devastating political crack in the system. Silverstone looks like it could be a genuine nightmare for Ferrari. 40 seconds without braking zones and no battery recharge possible, with the race describing it as the worst possible scenario. And then there's the Ecclestone, Horner, and Ferrari backstory, a management market that is absolutely boiling over. On top of all that, the British weekend brings the sprint format, hard compounds over 5G on the left front tires, and the wild card of British weather. This fight is far from over.